Okay, can you see me now? Oh, okay. It says that the broadcast is going on right now. What's that? Okay.
Now on Google Hangouts, and I see the.
What about the chat box? Can you see the chat box on the right-hand side of the page, or either that or right below my name? Okay. Okay, you can see that? Okay. Perfect. Okay. And can you hear my voice? Okay. Did you press the play button? There should be a triangle in the middle of the page. Right. And right now it says that there is one viewer. I can't tell. Is anyone else able to click on to this from their individual device? Yes. Oh, that's a good problem to have. Mm-hmm. Oh, excellent. Okay. Okay, sounds good. I shall start then. Okay, I'm going to type something into the chat box. I just want to make sure that you can communicate with me this way now that Jennifer and I aren't talking anymore. So I'm going to type in there, can you see this? And if someone could just respond back in there, then we'll be able to ask questions that way. And the chat box should appear below the video. I'll wait about 10 more seconds, and if it doesn't work, then I'll just go on to the next part. All right, so we'll just skip that part with that. Well, thank you so much for coming to this session today. Really appreciate it. What we'll be doing is I'll be showing this presentation on a timeline. So I'm actually going to take a moment right now to share my screen. So the screen should probably go blank for a second and then it will load. So one moment. And now you should be able to see my screen. There we go. Now I can see that you're on that page. So the first thing I'd like everyone to do is to actually go to my presentation. What you're going to do is go to our website, www.hstry.co. And I'll give you a moment to get to this website. Once you're there, you're going to click on Timelines at the top of the page. And then after this, you'll be able to see my public timeline presentation. And it's this one right over here that says ST4T, Digital Learning Portfolio. So just to review that, you went to hstry.co, then you clicked on Timelines, then you're going to come down to the community and click on ST4T, Digital Learning Portfolios. And so if at any time what I'm saying doesn't quite make sense or if you get lost, you can always come right back to the presentation and this will load. And here you'll be able to see the ST4T logo and a description of what we'll be doing today. So a quick overview and introduction. I work for a company called Hstry. We are an edtech startup. And what you're going to be learning today is how to use our free tool to create student learning portfolios. So by the end of this session, I hope you're going to walk away with some tips for creating interactive portfolios in your classroom. Just a little bit about me. At this time last year, I had my own classroom. I was a middle school social studies teacher up in Maine, and I taught in a one-to-one laptop program. So all my students had MacBook Airs. It was amazing. And with that, I really wanted to do digital learning portfolios, but I actually didn't do that well with it. So I'm going to talk about some of my pain points I had in my classroom as well. So if you want to learn any more about me now or later, you can click on my background, and this will just take you to my digital resume, showing more about my background, about my experiences teaching in Maine and what it was like as a teacher there, using capacity matrices in a standards-based environment. And just a reminder that this is a live stream video, so that when this session is done, you'll actually be able to view the entire presentation on YouTube. I'll embed the video right here so that even after the session has ended, you've gone home away from this conference, you can still review what we learned. So what exactly is Hstry? We are an edtech startup, and you can describe us in a lot of different ways. There's the traditional use for a timeline creation tool, but what we're discovering is that users are taking our tool and they're not just making these historical timelines, they're doing all sorts of amazing things. You can use it as a presentation tool, or what we'll be learning about today, a platform for digital learning portfolios. And we do sell a textbook alternative. If you want to know more about that, I'm more than happy to talk to you on the phone or through email later, and much, much more. One unique thing about us is how many countries we're actually used in. A couple months ago, this stat was over 100 countries teachers and students were using Hstry in. And this keeps increasing. Right now, because the school year in the US has ended, we're shifting our outreach efforts to the Southern Hemisphere, such as Australia. And that's where we're getting a lot of our signups now. So the top thing of what we're going to talk about is creating learning portfolios. How can you actually use Hstry to create these learning portfolios? So what I'd like to happen is to have you answer some questions right now, and perhaps Jennifer can moderate this a little bit. What challenges have you had in the past when creating portfolios? And if possible, I'd like you to put your answers into the comment section of our Google Hangout. And so right down here in this area, on your screen, you should see something that looks like this, and you can actually type those comments right down there. So if you could take a moment right now to type some of your comments. The question was, what challenges have you had in the past when creating portfolios? Okay, I don't see anyone typing, so I'll just go over some of the challenges that I had in my classroom. So as mentioned, I taught middle school social studies in a one-to-one classroom, and finding a good tool was very difficult. My first year teaching, I had this idea that we could have like student-led conferences. It would be great. The students would stand up with their parents and present to their teachers of what they had learned based on standards. And to do this, I had them create a Google site. So every student had their own Google site. Now this was great in theory. In practice, it really failed. They were ugly. They were hard to create. My kids who were very tech savvy, they did awesome with it. My kids who weren't tech savvy, who didn't have a lot of skills on the computer, their homes, they didn't have internet in their homes. It was a really bad idea for them. Other things when you think about design. On Google Sites, I just let it be a free-for-all. And so some students ended up putting their face in the background of their learning portfolio. And when you have a face of a kid, it's, cute at first, but it's not very clear. And so what you'll notice with Hstry, this thing that you're seeing now, is that it's very clean. There's a lot of white space. So a student could still add a picture of their face, because my middle school students love doing things like that, but it's not going to make everything else hard to read if you do that. Other challenges that existed, one of the hardest things to do when you're teaching is finding time to create those learning portfolios. If you were like me, you're trying to get students to turn in their assignments on time. That's hard enough. So they've turned in these assignments, now they have to put them on a portfolio. And as I was arranging my classes throughout the year, as time progressed, they really didn't have time to do these portfolios. So I could assign it as a homework assignment, and then maybe half of them would do it. But finding time to do that was very difficult, because creating with Google Sites took a lot of time. Other challenges I mentioned before, entry. I want my kids at the very top, those gifted and talented kids, those more tech-savvy kids, those kids who come from families with very high education levels. I want them to be able to create something that's just as amazing as my kids at the bottom, my kids who are my struggling readers. That kid with the 3rd grade reading level in my 8th grade class, they need to be able to create the same quality project that that kid at the top needs to create. So those were some challenges that I had. I'm going to check real quick to see if there were any comments. And I do not see any comments, so I'll just keep going. So a good question to always ask, what's the point? Why should we bother to create learning portfolios? And over here, you can see the answer. It's a way to showcase student work. Students might make a project. It could take them 1 month, 2 months to create. And you want a way to really celebrate that student work, to show them that it really matters and that now they've learned it and there's a reason behind it, so let's put it online. The second thing, integrate experiences. To really, get that learning to stick, you want students to have the opportunity to reflect on their learning and integrate those experiences. How did what they did outside in their science class, how does that really impact their community? How does that relate to what they're going to do next year in their science class? And then the third thing about creating digital learning portfolios is that you want to be able to share it with others. And once you create one on Hstry, you can share the link with others. You can embed it into other sites. And my favorite, you could actually use it to do student-led conferences. And now I'm just going to take a moment to give a demo of Hstry. How will you actually use Hstry? So just to show you what this whole Hstry thing is about. I'm going to type in hstry.co. And I believe I'm already logged in. And when you log in for the first time and when you log in, you're going to be brought to your teacher dashboard. You won't have classes yet, and you won't have timelines yet, since I'm assuming you haven't created any. But what I'm going to do now is click on Create a Timeline. And this is how a timeline is set up. And you can see right away, there's nothing on it. At the top, you have a place for a banner. Very similar to Twitter or Facebook, you can add a big banner photo going across the top. The next part down here, adding a cover photo, this would have been the place where my students would have put that picture of their face that they took, that they love to put so much. And the title of the timeline, you can change that to anything. So I'm just going to write my name right now as the title. Now, other components of the timeline, there are headings, and you can have multiple headings. Some teachers will call headings chapters. I'm going to write in here, first semester. Now, there are different kinds of blocks that you can add to your timeline. The most basic one is a text block, and you can type your text here. You can add images. I'm just going to upload an image. So when you click on Add an Image, you can either upload one from your computer or you can paste a link of an image. So I'm going to upload one from my computer real quick. And this is a screenshot. I'll actually do one from an earlier one. And in case you didn't know it, today is the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. And so this is why I have this Battle of Waterloo screenshot there. And then you can add images. I'm sorry, you can add text images. And if you use images from an online source, remember to credit here. Other components of the timeline, YouTube videos. What I'll do when this session ends is I'll actually paste the link to the YouTube video on that timeline, and I'll add it so YouTube video can be embedded right here. You can add audio files, so you could upload, if students create a podcast, you could upload their podcast. At the lower levels in the elementary, you can have a student read a certain passage throughout the year. And in order to track their progress over time, you could have them keep reading that same passage and really hear how they can pronounce the words, the speed at which they read, so you can track progress over time in that way. Other fun things, you can add quiz questions. You can also add an image. And just a quick one, and to put the answer, you simply put the check mark. Did you know boxes are right here? Did you know? Some of Hstry's team is based in Europe. So you have these boxes that are already here. When you want to add more boxes, you can simply click on this plus button. Whenever you see the plus button on Hstry, that means you can do something else with it. So I'm going to add another text box, and I'm going to type text there. And then I'm going to add a heading this time. I'll type a new heading here. And so now this is a way to separate. If you were doing a portfolio over time, you could have all your first semester articles on the first section, second semester on the next section. And if I want to add more, I can click the plus button and I can add an image block now. There's also add a conclusion down here at the bottom. And you'll be able to see on that timeline that I've already created, I'm going to go back to that now, that at the bottom, I have a conclusion with another picture and a blurb. And so with history, your students have the power to really create what they want to create. You can have it very structured and tell them exactly what to put on their learning portfolios, or you can leave it up to them. So I have some suggestions for that as well. One idea, my summer interns are trying out a lot of different ways of using history. And one project that they'll be doing is to reflect on their internship and really keep track of what they've done. So they're going to be adding a timeline with one block a week. This way, at the end of their internship, they'll be able to share their learning with their school. And I will also be able to write a letter of recommendation really fast. So originally it started off as a way for me to be efficient and save time, but then, it's really going to help them be able to share their learning experiences. They can write down the people that they've met, the ideas that they had, the projects that they created. So it'll be a living document, really, of what their internship was like. So now what I'd like to do is I'll pause this for a bit. And what I'd like you to do is actually create a timeline. It's your time to play with this. Now, I really believe that you can't just tell students what to do. You can try, but it's not going to be as effective as if you actually know how to use the tool. So it's pretty quick, and I'll give you about 5 to 10 minutes depending on where we are with time. And this is a chance for you to play with history. So during this time, I'd like you to do the following tests. The first test is to create an account with Hstry. To do that, let me go to hstry.co. You're going to click on that tab, and that will take you to the login page. Once you're on the login page, then you're going to have to sign up with your email and a username. That's going to bring you to your teacher dashboard. And the teacher dashboard is what I showed earlier. And once you're on your teacher dashboard, you're going to click on Create a Timeline. And whenever you see those little blue dots that you just saw, that means the page is loading, something is happening. And so the next part of it is to add text, image, and other blocks to your timeline. See what you can create right now. You could add something about yourself, something about your learning at this conference. And then when the time is up, I would like you to be ready to share one idea you have for using history in your classroom. And if you have any questions during this time, just type it into the comments box. Or what we could do is have, I could call Jennifer again, which the comments box isn't working, so that's what I think I'll be doing right now. So go ahead and do that. And right now it's 12:54. I'll give you some time to do this until about 1 p.m. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about reflection questions. So go ahead and go. And I'm just going to turn off the camera real quick as well. So the question was that you have one picture right now and you want to add additional pictures?
Oh, we found it. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, someone asked and then someone else.
Yes, so you just click the plus sign.
Okay.
So it actually started in, the idea started in December 2012 when the co-founders were in China. And then over the next year, it developed into this platform. And the current version, the company came to the US in February 2014 to Boston and went through the Learn Launch Accelerator. Learn Launch is a startup accelerator and co-working space that focuses specifically on education technology. And so that's where our office is now.
You might want to share that with the group too. That's an interesting story.
Yes.
Okay, we have a question.
Okay.
Yes. Wait a minute. I want to go back this way. Have this playing around here. Okay. So I really don't want that. I really don't want that there. Okay, so she wants to remove the did you know about. Move it up. Oh, she wants to move it up.
Great question. So what I'll actually do is share this timeline right now. I'm going to share my screen again. So when you've created timelines, you're just going to go down here. And if you want to move the boxes, we don't see you live. Oh, you don't? Okay. Oh, I bet.
We're trying to get you. Go ahead. Keep talking because we'll listen.
Okay, now can you see this?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, so here's my timeline, and there's boxes in the lower right-hand corner. This plus button with the arrows, that means you can move it. So you're going to simply click and drag it to the position on the timeline that you want it to be dragged to. If you want to get rid of a box, you can click on the trash can. Yes, I'm sure I want to delete this item. Yes, I'm sure I want to delete this item, and you can move boxes around that way. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these ones right here. And then I can click on the plus button, add text here. Then I can actually view my timeline. So right now, if I shared my timeline, it would be very plain looking. And going back to that, so view timeline is in the upper right-hand corner. Edit timeline is in the same place. And one more important thing to note about the timeline, and this is essential with very young learners, is that there's auto-save. So as you're working, it automatically saves everything that you've done. So you don't have to worry about reminding kids to save their document, but it'll just automatically save for you. Now, sometimes when you click on that View Timeline button, it's going to tell you that you have an error. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to click on Image, but I'm not going to upload an image. Now when I click on View Timeline, it's going to tell me that it cannot be viewed because I haven't uploaded an image. Now if I delete that box and press View again, I'm going to be able to view my timeline without the error message. So it's 1:07 right now, so I'm going to go back to the presentation and talk a little bit about reflection questions. So once you have a tool like Hstry to create these portfolios on, you want to make sure that students are actually learning. They're taking their learning to the next level. And that's where the questions come in. You know, you have this tool, it allows entry, it's going to be very beautiful, but you want to make sure the portfolios they're creating are high quality. And as the teacher, you really need to guide their learning, learn how to ask questions so that students can reflect on their learning. And one of the big mistakes I made when I first started teaching was just assuming students knew how to reflect. When you ask a question, what did you learn from this activity? And say students are studying the planets. One student might give a fact-based answer that says, oh, I learned that there were 9 planets. Well, that's good. I'm glad you learned something, but you want deeper learning than that. So everyone has favorite reflection questions to ask, and I won't have you answer this since the question part is disabled. But this is one of my favorite quotes on reflection. It was in a book, How We Think, and they said that reflection is active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of grounds that it supports and further conclusion to which it tends. Now, what does that actually mean? How can you actually apply that when you're teaching fourth graders? You want reflection to be happening all the time. That it's actually careful consideration. And that's not going to happen unless you ask students specific questions. Below this section, I've given you 4 links here that actually have lists full of reflection questions. My favorite one is this first one from Edutopia. The reflection questions that I've shared in this section right here, these are from a reflection on the Hour of Code. If you're not familiar with the Hour Code, I highly encourage you to check it out. It's a huge event in December every year, and they're just trying to get students interested in coding, and they ask that everyone just puts in 1 hour. So this was a reflection from that. And a top question you want to ask kids after they've learned is, what's the point? You know, why did you just spend all that time learning that? Make sure that they can actually connect what they're learning to their life. So some examples of that question: why does coding actually matter? How does coding impact your particular life? So you want them to be able to relate it to their life. You know, just as students are when they're annotating text, you have 3 different ways of relating the text to you. You can relate the text to yourself, your life. You can relate the text to other things you've read, text to text, or text to world. That's when you get into those higher order thinking skills, really looking at the big picture. So that what's the point question, that's essential. Other types of questions, you can ask those about transferable skills. Sometimes it's hard for a student in an 8th grade algebra class to see how that's going to help them later in life. So if they haven't connected it in their classroom to something in the real world, then make sure that they can see what skills they're learning. And some of those examples are, what is the best way to practice these skills? What skills did you practice that you think will be useful in other subjects? You know, it might be something on time management, turning in homework on time. Another one you want to look at is the student's thought process. You know, did they actually change their thoughts? And some people might look at these questions and say, this is the touchy-feely kind of questions that aren't great, but you can really start to see how a student thinks when you ask these kind of questions. So how did you feel about coding before coming to class today? Maybe they didn't know it existed. How did your feelings change after completing the hour code? And then to get even deeper, you always want to ask the question, why? Why? So what influenced this change? And when you think of life skills, overcoming challenges, what was the most difficult thing that you did today? Why did you find it hard? Looking at challenges, you could apply this to an entire semester of work, or if it was just a one-day learning experience, such as the hour of code, you could apply it to that. Next piece, sharing your learning. And this is where I think this is the really cool thing about history, that you can actually share your timelines with the world. You know, students do all of this work in school, and that's really great, and their teacher gives them feedback, and it's really nice. But at the end of the class, what happens with their work? And so to actually have some kind of living document, like a digital learning portfolio, that's something really cool to hold on to. And they can look back and they can keep adding to it. A simple way to share it with friends and family. As mentioned before, once you share it publicly, you can link to this. You can share it on Twitter if you wanted. You could share it on Facebook. I'm sure students could find a way to share it on Snapchat, being very creative. And the other part is, you know, evolving to the point where you can do student-led conferences. And you can throw this kind of timeline up on the board, have the teachers in the room, have the parents in the room, and it really makes it student-centered learning when they learn in a certain way, and then they can share their learning, and they can articulate what they learned with this in the background. And one other piece, different kinds of advice. This is just a question you could ask students, especially at the end of a big project. What advice would you give to other students? And for the hour code, what tutorials would you recommend? And so just to go through some resources, as mentioned before, this is a great list of questions from Edutopia. And it's huge. There's 40 questions here, backward looking, inward looking, outward looking, forward looking. I really encourage everyone to take time to actually read through it, and then in a week's time, read through it again. Every time I look at this list of questions, I think of something new that I could do with reflections for students. And here are just more questions to look at. And this last one, the hour of code reflection. This is actually up on our website. This was created last December. And soon we'll have a make a copy feature on Hstry, where there'll be a button and students can actually make a copy of this and then insert their answers into this. Very similar to Google Documents, make a copy. And right now, I'm just going to get on the phone again and call Jennifer and answer any questions. There's about 10 minutes left probably, so I'd like to answer some questions and give you time to play with Hstry again.
Hi, Clarence.
Hello again.
Hello. Okay, I'm going to put you on speaker, and we'll see if we have any questions here.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Claire? Yes. Okay, a silly question.
Sure. So coding, I was actually at the Massachusetts State House right now celebrating this group of girls and the coding that they did. And so when you look at our website, let me just share the screen again. Entire screen. I'm going to share it. And so coding, that's what developers do. And so when you look at this website, in order for this to be laid out the way it was, someone has to tell the computer what to do. And so coding has different kinds of languages that tell the computer what to do. Our site in the background is Ruby on Rails, and that's how they can create these boxes. And I'm going to go to the hour of code, and oh, where did this go? An hour of code resources timeline. I'll paste a link to this on that presentation at the end. Oops, I can't get to it. I'll try to find it again. And so more about the hour of code. What it is this day in December where they encourage students to learn about coding. What is this thing? And so there's a National Computer Science Week. This past year it was December 8th through 14th. And there's all these self-guided tutorials on coding. And so the president got involved, created a little video encouraging kids to code. There was a lot of tweets from him about it. They like to call it the largest learning event in history. And all they're trying to do is get more students involved learning about what code is. So I'll send you this timeline so that you can learn more about this. If you look up the hashtag Hour of Code, you can see all these just amazing examples of what schools are doing. Some schools are taking a whole day and having all their students go into the cafeteria and learn how to code. And so there's a lot of tutorials. Code.org, they're huge with coding. Khan Academy also has some Hour of Code, and a lot of other organizations have created tutorials teaching students how to code.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions? Claire, could you take a minute and just kind of explain how Hstry evolved and the development of your organization?
Of course. And I'll actually go to our About page. And so Hstry started off as this timeline creation tool, and our mission was to really captivate students in the study of social studies. You think of your own experiences in middle school social studies, where students are really passive. They're given a textbooks and they're consumers of information. So we have this vision to flip that model, where students are actually exploring the information and then they're creating it themselves. So looking back on the history of Hstry, the idea was actually born when the two co-founders were living in China, and they wanted a way to tell people about the pollution going on. And so what they did is create a series of tweets as if someone woke up in the year 1952, living during the Great Smog of London, and had a smartphone and began live tweeting. So over the course of 5 days, they actually reached 1.5 million people on Twitter. And that really spurred on this idea that, hey, we're really onto something. This is a great way to teach students what's going on. And so that's really how the idea began, and it evolved from there. So every once in a while, we'll still do those live Twitter reenactments. There was another one in May 2013 on the conquest of Everest. In February 2014, Hstry came to the United States. They had done some pilots over in Europe, the Steve Jobs School in the Netherlands, but looking at the market in Europe, the United States is a lot bigger. There's some more technology integration happening in schools. So they thought, okay, if we really want to grow, we're going to move to the States. And they came to the Learn Launch. It's a startup accelerator. So right now where I am, it's a startup accelerator and co-working space dedicated just to education technology startups. Lots of amazing ideas happening here. And so it grew from there. When I started with Hstry back in December, we had around 2,000 users. That was December 2014. Now, 7 months later, we're over 40,000 users. Our official launch out of beta, so beta is what new companies will say their websites are in, and that just means a period of development. We weren't doing any kind of marketing. We still haven't done any marketing, any traditional paid advertisements for our product, because we really wanted to take time to refine this tool and get a lot of feedback from teachers of how we could improve it. So as mentioned, we're at 40,000 users now. We've gotten written up by quite a few ed tech bloggers, and it's really been word of mouth that has helped grow our community. Does that explain a lot about the history?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? If people have questions, Claire, as they're using this in their classrooms, what's the best way to contact you?
Yes. So if you ever have any questions, please send us an email. I'll go back to my timeline here. So you can always send an email to claire@hstry.co, or you can send it to our help email, or even reach out to us on Twitter, or give me a phone call. Any way you want to get in touch with us, we will respond. Another pretty cool thing about Hstry is that there are 2 of us based here in the US, and the rest of our 3 team members are based in Europe. So those help emails that people send, someone responds to them instantly. So here it is. If you want to contact me, Claire at hstry.co. You can reach out to me on Twitter. You can reach out to Hstry on Twitter. We will always reply.
Perfect. All right, Claire, we thank you so much, and we're super excited to use this in our classrooms, and we'll definitely look for you on Twitter.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait until to hear all your feedback, and thank you so much for letting us do the Hangout this way. And if you have any questions, just get in contact with us.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye now.